Could be. And so today is
Tuesday.
Tuesday, oh thanks. And then it's the date is 18th of
18th, yeah, of February.
February 2014. I'm Annika, and I'm here with Pamela Stern and Les Gunderson. I'm gonna maybe start questioning where on the waterfront did you work?
Actually, I worked right here in Queensboro at the foot of Jardine Street.
Yeah.
Sather Boatworks. Sather Boatworks.
And what type of business was it?
Building commercial fish boats, wooden commercial fish boats.
And so it was located just on
Just
the
right on the Fraser River here, on the Anasis Channel, right on the riverside of the dike.
Yeah. Was the location always? I mean, the site always the same, or did you change it over the years?
Well, originally this place was on Anasis Island,
Yeah.
which is out here, built by Suzuki's, who
Yeah.
are, David Suzuki. These were his two uncles that originally built this shipyard. And because of no services on Anasis Island, no power, no water, no bridge, they dismantled the shop and moved it across the river and set it up on the property, its present site at the foot of Jardine Street.
When did the business Sather Boatworks open?
Originally, the shop was moved there in, I would say, about 1939, 38, 39.
Oh, but the Suzukis were interred during the war.
That's right.
And
They barely got in there. They got set up. They actually only repaired a couple boats and were interned, and the yard was turned over to, for a while it belonged to BC Packers, and then it was taken over by Conrad Stockland Boatworks. And then in about 1950, Mel Sather bought the yard and hired my father to run the shop as a foreman.
Okay.
Mel Sather was a halibut fisherman and whatnot, so he remained at sea for the first few years until he was basically forced to retire because of health.
Yeah.
And he basically was not a boat builder, but he was a good businessman and ran the office and ordered supplies, etc.
When did you start working there?
I started in 1959
Doing what?
as a shipwright, as an apprentice shipwright, I should say, at the beginning.
Okay.
But because of the yard was basically a 7-man crew, and in those days you had to have a 12-man crew in order to qualify for government apprenticeship programs. So basically I learned as I worked, basically you could say that's how it went. And of course, having my father, I was down there all the time anyways, even before I started full time. I actually started there in 1953, 54 as a cleanup boy. And all the time I went to high school, I was doing weekend cleanup, just the Saturday cleanup. And then I graduated from school and I was working on the tugboats here in the river and at the shipyard. I had 2 jobs going at one time. And then I was sort of told I better make up my mind which one I was going to do. So I ended up at the shipyard for 37 years. I worked there.
Okay. Do you know how did your father set up the business? How did you?
My father, basically, we have to go back to Norway. My grandfather, he was a carpenter,
Okay.
seaman, and he came to Canada, not Canada, he came to the United States actually in 1904. And he immigrated up here because of actually there was an opening in the sawmill that paid 5 cents an hour more than what he was getting at the present where he was down in Idaho. But then when he came here, he found out that they were giving out homesteads at Cape Scott on the top end of Vancouver Island. So my father was born in New Westminster in 1912. At age 6 months, they took him up to Cape Scott, which was, if you've ever looked at the map, it's a godforsaken hole. There was absolutely no services whatsoever, but there was the promise they were going to put a wharf in, so that if you had mixed farming, fishing, whatever, you could get your supplies out. But this didn't happen, as you know. First World War broke out. Canada's broke, as like the rest of the countries, and no money was ever become available.
Yeah.
So they stayed up there till they starved out and ended up coming back down here to New Westminster. And then grandfather became a commercial fisherman. Right at the end, if you went across his field, you'd run right to where his fish boat was tied up and his net rack float and whatnot.
What did he catch?
We had, this is a salmon river, so it was all species of salmon.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know how the river works here. You only are here when the runs are coming up. But we had 5 days a week fishing going on. Unlike now, we have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But in the early part of the year, he would travel up the coast with his friends and whatnot to Rivers Inlet. Because the further north you go, the earlier the runs come. And you
Yeah.
keep chasing the fish down the coast till they eventually come back to the Fraser.
Yeah.
Come the end of August, September, this is the hot spot.
Yeah. So, how long did you work for Sather?
37 years.
What do you think was good in that work?
Well, the one thing that I liked about the job, it wasn't the best paying job for the fact that you could make more money in house construction, but it's challenging. There's not straight lines. You're swinging bevels. You're shaping planks. Every piece is individually made. There's not, in our case, it wasn't mass production. You know what I mean? Every individual piece, every piece of plank that went on that boat, every post, every window, everything was custom made. And like I said, there wasn't a square piece on the whole boat.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked it. And then the beauty of it after, as we get a little bit later on, we did all aspects of it. We made our own models. We lofted them out. We mailed the molds. We set them up. We built them. We installed the engines, the fuel tanks. We put the shafts in. We hooked up the steering, the hydraulics, did the wiring, right from beginning to end. It was our project. So
Mm-hmm.
it was, every day was something different.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike a manufacturing job on the assembly line, this, you got something, it was repetitious in one way. In my time down there, we built 120 boats.
Oh.
Okay, so you get one when you're finally all said and done. You have a big launching party, and out the door she goes, which we have marine ways, and went right into the river, and away she went, and then you start all over again. And we're back almost like the old Vikings. I still have my adzes and axes because we chop the keel and the keelsons and stuff and the stems by hand.
Yeah.
How did you learn to do that?
Basically from my father.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my father and my grandfather. Like I say, he was also a carpenter, and my dad was more the shipwright fisherman. And I'm somewhat like you. I still instruct boat building in part of an apprenticeship program
Where?
down on Granville Island.
Oh, okay.
So tomorrow night I have a class I have to get to instruct on boat building, wooden boat building.
Who's that through?
This is Quadrant Marine.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Jan down there. She's one of the in the Wooden Boat Festival, and
Okay.
anyhow, so I have a program that it's written up for me, but it basically describes the thing. And the reason I'm there is basically a history lesson. Nobody builds wooden boats now to speak of. It may be a little wooden rowboat, a lapstrake, whatever. But what I do is teach where it came from, or like I said, I give a history lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell them how the bases of the boats come by, what was, as you know, back you can go all the different styles of ships, from the old Viking ship, which they built one down here at the Scandinavian Center and whatnot, which they still take out and what. But yeah, I just basically say this is how it all started.
Mm-hmm.
I have wooden mold, that models that we used actually to build our boat from.
Mm-hmm.
So, and nobody knows how to loft off of these things anymore. So all of a sudden I'm getting to be more of a rare commodity in that respect. So now I get to talk about what I used to do.
Okay. So that term you just used, loft off?
Lofting, yeah.
Lofting. What does that mean?
One picture's worth 1,000 words.
Okay.
Just take me a second. Now I'm going to have to put you in one of my classes.
Well, we might want to come.
Okay.
This is a type of model. Over the years, the old fishermen, boat builders, they come to an idea that would give them the best type of sea boat for what they were doing. This is an old style double-ended gillnet boat.
Yeah.
This is a 1/2-inch scale. The lines here represent a foot. They're a 1/2 inch. So we got red cedar and yellow cedar. in order so that we can pick up our lofting. We divide this boat up into stations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we take off by using calipers. You pick up all the measurements: water line 1, water line 2, water line 3, water line 4, and so on. And then you mark it down, and you take your scale rule, and you can explode
And
it
then
to a full
so then
size.
you blow it up. Okay.
And then we lay it on the floor, and we make our full size models off it.
Okay, so the curator at the New West Museum was telling me that she's just got a gift of a half hull from the Dawes shipyard. So that's what that is? Okay.
My father, he made this one.
Okay.
They built about 6, 8 of this particular model of this boat.
Okay.
Where did you think, or where did you get the wood for the boats?
Well, actually, I mean, we are quite close to the supply. These boats mainly red cedar for planking on the smaller ones, fir, Douglas fir, keelsons, Douglas fir. We used to have timberland at the other side of the river over by Patilla Bridge there. They custom cut your big materials. They could cut you a 50-foot long stick, 14 by 26 or whatever. So you always ordered up all your material. The stem was made out of gumwood, Australian gumwood, which would come from Australia. White bending oak, which was come from actually the southern states, down Louisiana way and stuff like that. So boat lumber, unlike house lumber, you basically have to have it at least a year in advance for your planking and whatnot. It has to be air dried in order to, you're going to appreciate, you can't have wet materials and you build a boat and have it shrink and it opens up like a picket fence. You know what I mean? So, and these boats, when you plank them all up, you've heard of caulking. You put your cotton and oakum into the seams in order to tighten them up. Well, that's what I say. You make fine planking seams and you don't want the thing to open up wide. Every plank we put on this boat was put in the steam box, steamed for an hour, hour and a half, and then bent on. So.
How many people worked in Sadler?
About 7 was our well, we were up at the high, I guess, of about 12 people worked there, but like any other business, you only have so much tools and so much space, so you become inefficient. When we built our range of boat, was the smallest was 32 foot, and then the biggest was 70. So in that particular range, that's where we was our style. And like I said, we only built a couple of pleasure boats. We stuck strictly to commercial fish boats.
Okay. So was Sadler in competition with Mercer?
Oh yeah, what I honestly say, there was probably 35 shipyards from Steveston to Mission, and every one of it was all free enterprise. You put out, a guy come to your shop and he says, okay, I want a boat a certain size with a certain engine in it and so on and so forth, and you give him a price on it. It was all done to contract. So, and then each yard had a different reputation for, as luck would have it, even in the later years when we were still building wooden boats, when everybody else had gone to fiberglass, but we had a very successful bunch of fishermen that were using our boats. And you start to look at it and they figure something's got to be right with those boats. So let's get, a wooden fish boat. And then, of course, as the industry changed, we got, at the end, 48-foot West Coast trawlers were our big thing with freezer systems on them. So that's the other thing we got involved in, putting shark freezers on. So all of a sudden now you had a more of a quality product and you could stay out for a month and didn't have to come in. Little boat like this, they were delivering every day, and then when they were putting ice on, they could last for 3-4 days. When you put a freezer on, until you run out of fuel or water or grub, you stayed there until you loaded it.
Okay.
So it kind of revolutionized the industry, but like everything else, it become too efficient.
Yeah. Is anybody still fishing with wooden boats?
I still have, I didn't realize I warranted these boats for my life. I still have some of the guys pull me up, and then, I hate to say it, I'm back working right now on a project just down here at Shelter Island, old wooden boat that I got talked into helping out a friend here to finish this. It had a fire on board, and so, we're revamping the thing. So I'm back to making planks again and putting a few frames in and deck beams and, just to show you. This not the first time that That's actually at the Cedar Boat Works there.
Okay.
Is the business still running?
No,
Okay.
18 years ago I had a heart attack and I was out the door and that was the end of the business.
Okay.
This basically is, is the boat that this model is. This is what they look like when they're.
Oh, wonderful photos.
No, this is a little bit old. This is in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
But anyhow, this is sort of the commercial fish boat look to them.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that goes back to some family pictures. This is the
Okay.
beginning. Here's this was the last wooden boat that we built, the Buccaneer
The
Breeze.
Buccaneer Breeze.
And,
What year was that?
That was in '89, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there like similar or other wood-related industries in Queensborough?
Well, of course, Queensborough basically was a place that was nothing but immigrants down here, because we actually had 3 sawmills going down here, so we were cutting lumber, so there was the towboat industry bringing logs in, there was the sawmills, which paid a good wage and you didn't really have to speak English as long as you worked hard. So that's how come all our neighborhood, we had every nationality known to man down here. My school room, I think I had something like 28, 30 different nationalities just in my class. No 2 people were from, I mean, we had a lot of Ukrainian, Slovak, Russian, Italian, down here. And so everybody, the next street over was all the Scandinavians. That's all the Norwegians, all the fishermen were the next block over here.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of settled block by block.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about, me corking the boat. This is with the mallet and the iron and whatnot there.
Is that you?
That's me, believe it or
Oh,
not,
okay.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah. You gave the picture to the paper because that's.
They come down and did somewhat what you're
Okay.
doing here,
Okay.
an interview,
Okay.
and they come around the shop and took pictures. This is right inside Cedar Boat Works here, actually. This is one of our boats that we built, the Dyer Street.
Yeah. Is the business side, I mean, the Sather Boat Works, is it under some preservation?
The building actually is designated a heritage site, but unfortunately the guy that got it become a collector of junk, and there's 2-3 sunken boats around there now, and there's only the one original shop left. The other, there was actually 3 more buildings, and they've all been tore down.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we had one big lumber shed there that burnt down, and but it basically kind of went into. There never was any more real boat building going on. Once I went out the door.
Yeah. Was the job dangerous in the same?
Dangerous. Another thing that I think the beauty of it is if you didn't watch what you were doing, you could be in trouble. We used big power tools, big band saws, and planers and jointers and all this equipment. You could lose a finger or cut yourself, or you could fall off the top deck of the boat and end up down, and really be hurt. And we're walking on deck beams before we put decks in and stuff like that. So you really had to be quite agile on your feet, and you had to like that kind of a person that didn't like to walk on like a tightrope walker. In reality, you had to be able to balance on beams and stand up, on narrow planks and whatnot, and to do this. And again, like I said, we worked year round, and I'd never worked in a building with heat in it, so we just. Your movement kept you warm, you know what I mean? The harder you worked, the warmer you got. And we used to be running around in t-shirts when it was freezing, and the river was frozen right under the boat. We'd stand on ice when we were planking the boat, nailing the planks up underneath, because, like I say, the boat is right actually in the river itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say? What was good in Queensborough in terms of the work?
The work. Well, for me, Queensborough was the ideal place. My lifestyle was like a Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn type of guy. We had for a person, you're fishing. I even commercial fished. I had a rowboat, and I could go out with a net here and fish. I had at that time it was only $1 for a personal fishing license. So when I was going to high school, I made my money. After I come home, I went down to the river and fished, till midnight and stuff like that. And if it was good, you could make, at the time, it didn't seem like much now, but you could make $20-$30 a night, when everybody else was making $5.
Right.
But it was only for a short period of time.
And you could do that with a personal fishing license. You could then sell the fish.
I had a 14-foot clinker boat with a 2 Armstrong, as I call it. I rode and whatnot. But a good friend of mine, he run a fish company, and I had ladies that were canning fish would be down the dock waiting for me to come in, and I could sell my fish to them. And what they didn't take, a fish collector come along and took it.
Okay.
So it was a real good deal. And a couple of friends of mine, we were about 7-8 kids here in the river, in the slough here. We just fished right out here, and we were all doing the same thing. So we kind of had a little brotherhood out there, and fishing at night. And like I said, you only got a short period of time. It's from August, September till the end of September, middle of October, and you have sockeye, humpback, or and dog salmon come through the slough here, and a few spring salmon too. So we used to get all the different species of fish, but we were never had a drum or anything. We pulled by hand, and in the main river you fished a 60 mesh net. Here we fished 30 because we're full of snags, and it's a lot shallower in the Annis's Channel.
So explain the difference between the two meshes.
The mesh. There's different sizes of meshes for what you're going to fish. Like now, you might have a 5 1/4. That's the length of the mesh in a day.
Okay.
Well, a regular net is 60 meshes deep.
Okay.
And you have a cork line and a lead line.
Okay.
Well, to fish the river here, so we didn't snag up all the time, we cut the net in half and only used the top half.
Okay,
so that made it more, and the river you have 150 fathom long. Okay, here we were fishing 35, 40 fathoms, what you could handle in a rowboat, until we got caught and fined because our net was too short.
Oh,
we didn't know that. Then we had to go to a 75 fathoms was the minimum length of net that you could fish. So I got a little bit bigger boat and I got a bigger net.
Okay.
Live and learn.
Okay. You only got caught once?
Yep.
Okay. Was there a fine?
No.
No.
They confiscated my net, which didn't matter. I just got another one.
Okay. Who confiscated the net?
Department of Fisheries. There was 2 fishery patrol boats that used to patrol the Fraser River up and down, and they they were the ones that caught us in here.
Do you know why they'd want you to have a larger net rather than a smaller net?
There was just something about the kids in the slough here were making more money than some of the guys on the outside, and I honestly think it was some of the fishermen weren't happy that we were in here where they couldn't fish. And so they kind of, you better check on those kids.
They thought you were grabbing their fish before it got to them.
Yeah. And the reality is they're fishing out there, we're fishing in here. I mean, it's just part of the vicious game.
Did you eat a lot of fish then?
Oh, well, yeah. You see, there's the other thing that changed over the years. One thing about being in the boat building industry, every time a fisherman come in, it was just common practice. They always had, a dozen fish in the hold. Help yourself, boys. You go along, and we got halibut and red snapper and lingcod and salmon, But but now all of a sudden the price of fish and the quotas and everything, they can't give a single thing away, and they, just can't afford to do that. But that was very nice. They always appreciated what you did, and you didn't always get bonuses or nothing like that. But what you did get is always fish to eat and stuff like that. So because we did a lot of repair work too. We built new boats. We had them contracted, but we also had somebody would all of a sudden have an engine break down or lose the propeller, or the rudder would fall off the boat, or they'd hit a log and she'd start to sink. I used to have to run down in the middle of the night and put down the cradle of ways there, and the boat would come roaring in, and I'd haul them up out of the water to keep them from sinking and whatnot. And then next day we'd change the plank and whatever, or fix the propeller, or So we were doing that kind of a marine service as well as new construction. we even took some smaller boats and cut them in half and lengthened them and made them bigger, and and rebuilt them and got more capacity out of them and stuff like that. So there was all kinds of interesting tricks to the trade.
Yeah. Like, did you also spend time in the river? I mean,
Well, I spent my whole life in the river.
leisure, did you?
We, as a young fella down here, like I said, there was no bridge to Annis's and whatnot, and that was our paradise. In the summertime, we used to swim across the river, or I always had a little rowboat. We'd row across just about every day I was over there. But we could do whatever we wanted because there was nobody else around, you know what I mean? So we'd go over there and we'd sport fish, as you might say, but we didn't have fancy equipment. We had a string and a stick, and that was it. And the beauty of it is too, I don't know if I should tell you this part of the story, but this whole of Queensboro, the perimeter was all Chinese gardens. Every block was a different vegetable garden. So naturally, as the boys going down the street, I was only born and raised over on Pembina here, 3 blocks away. You'd go through the Chinaman's garden, pick up a cabbage, pick up some tomatoes, and bring all this stuff down to the boat, and you had all this fresh vegetables that you were eating over. And now how could you beat that? Talk about healthy kids. We knew where every cherry tree was around down here, and like I said, it was just all, it's a paradise as far as we were concerned. If you were a social type of a person, that loved going to restaurants and movies and that, no, this was always a poor area. I mean, but what we did, like I say, everybody prided themselves on their food. I mean, we had the Russian hall, the Ukrainian Slovak hall, the Italian, the East Indian temple, and practically every weekend was some kind of a banquet, and banquet just meant food. And it didn't matter who you were or what you were. We went to everything.
Oh, you did? Okay.
You know what I mean? It was, like I said, we didn't realize anything about this discrimination because we were all different, So we had a great time as far as I'm concerned down here. And as far as work went, I mean, like I said, we had all these sawmills going. So just about, I would say, 50-60% of the parents that were down here either worked in the sawmill, Mercer Star Shipyard there, they employed a lot of people. Like in the Second World War, they were building fair miles and minesweepers and stuff like that. So there was lots of industry going on there, And right at the very top of the island here was Heaps Engineering, who were manufacturing machinery and this, that, and the other thing. My dad worked in the early days for Nelson Brothers Shipyard, was right down on Boundary Road here, and they had a big seine fleet. And so there was lots of people. It was a big operation working in the shipyard. We had the towboat industry. Like I said, I worked on the tugs. My neighbor across the street owned his own towboats and whatnot, so I naturally got talked into deckhanding with him and whatnot. But so there was logs up and down this river. I mean, with all the sawmills, and as you understand, the logs mainly come from up the coast, but you can't leave them in the salt water, because the teredos, the bugs eat them up. So you got to get them up in the fresh water as quick as possible. So my job on the tug, we were just going from basically the mouth of Point Grey outside, some of them we went up to Howe Sound and whatnot, but we were just mainly getting the logs in the river here to get them up in the mill that this guy that worked for, it was just right over here at Pacific Pine. So, you kind of contract to them, you keep them supplied and you're always on call for them. But unfortunately, it's always the middle of the night seems to be high tide. So like when I was working on that thing, I never got to see anybody because I was always, working all night long, and then I'd come home and I'd be sleeping while the rest are out having fun. So,
is that why you gave up working on the tug?
On the tug, yeah. And to tell you the truth, if I had been smart and got my skipper's ticket, I could, that lots of opportunities for coastal pilots and this and that. But it just seemed to me, at that time, it was such a slow industry. When you're watching at 2.5 miles an hour, you're pulling up the river, you know what I mean? It's so slow, and it's a wonderful time to be, take up book reading and learning something rather than sit there like a post. You know what I mean? So,
I don't know. I think some of those tugboat captains would say they have to pay an awful lot of attention in the river.
well, yeah, that's right. But when you're the skipper of the tug, you're responsible for everything. But when you're the lonely deckhand, you usually, when you're not on the booms running around with the chains and that, you got a paintbrush in your hand. You know what I mean? You're sitting there watching the world go by at 2.5 miles an hour.
Okay.
Was there a lot of wood waste on the river because of
Of course, it's still to this day. There's lots of debris and logs, and log salvage was a big business. And of course, you know how it is at freshet time. That's when you really get an onslaught of logs coming down here, and that's when they put the original bridge to Annis's there in 1954-55. They didn't think about this stuff, and they built it like a train trestle, and every piece of wood that came down the river got stuck. So there was a multitude of debris almost that went up 2 blocks in front of the bridge. So we got the contract of keeping this thing open. So all day, all night long, you're just moving logs and dropping them through to get them running, because it just about took the whole bridge out, just the weight of all the debris against it. And that's at freshet time, which is basically from the beginning, middle of May normally till July, and the river's running like a hurricane, and that's, you really learn how to handle a boat when you're working in those circumstances. You know what I mean? You're working up against a pile of debris that one time the tug swung sideways and it rolled right over onto the side like that. It didn't sink, but I mean that's how much just the current, the water pressure rolled this 42-foot boat. So it can be hair-raising, and of course you learn to dance on logs. You go running across, to try and hook a line onto the one you figure is the big one that you're going to try and pull out of the way. So sometimes you're stepping on a little piece of a wood like that, and it looks like it's a great big log. But it's speed that gets you going. When you're like a deer on your feet, you run like the wind, otherwise you go down.
Did you ever fall in?
Actually, I must admit that I really didn't fall in that many times. I got my feet wet, up to about here. But I really, and I didn't wear cork boots as such. I used to wear these water moccasins, as I call them, and I used to be quite lively on my feet. So that was the success. That's what come. They always look for a young deckhand, somebody that could go like
go
crazy.
Dance on the logs.
By the time you get to be 30 years old, you figure to be a fossil. So you got. By that time, you got to move into the wheelhouse and become skipper.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Queensborough.
74 years down here.
And did you know the people living in Queensborough?
Oh, you knew everybody in Queensborough when I was a kid. I mean, we had individual streets that you had your own street gang, and then our big thing was Queensborough, again, like I said, it was always a poor community. So we went to grade 6 down here, elementary school. We had one elementary school, and once you went to high school, junior high school, then high school, we had to take the bus and go uptown. So we were this plague of locusts that used to come to town, to go to the high school up there. But because we were this little core group, we were kind of hated, because we were the riffraff from Queensborough, but nobody played around with you because you were strength in numbers. I mean, everybody else could say what they want, but you had this little group that was up there, maybe 20, 30 people, and you lived quite well. Nobody pushed you around.
Okay, so people in the main part of New Westminster, they look down on the kids?
Oh, yeah. This was our term down here. They used to call you're from Ditch City, because there's the open ditches in Queensborough, and we used to play it up big. We'd tell them, if you're going to come down here, check the tide book and see to make sure, if it's high tide, bring your gumboots, because it's all underwater. And how we make our money down here, we gator hunt. When you get alligators in the ditches. They believed us. I mean, we're talking kids that just lived on the other side of the bridge. They weren't allowed to come down here. I mean, I had friends that are uptown, and if their parents ever heard of them coming down here, they'd have a fit, because this was the real, this were all the bad people, let's say, which made it absolutely perfect. Okay. And we kept that image up for years. We played on that. Okay. Our local community center, we used to laugh about it, because Queensborough, as you could see, any floodplain, as you know what I mean, we had a septic tank set up here. We didn't have a sewer system. It was impossible to sewer Queensboro. So that's what kept this place from really developing. And so that's how come all we fought all our life was to get proper drainage and get a sewer system down here. Well, all of a sudden, and I mean, I spent years on the ratepayers committee down here, and I can still remember the day somebody says, what kind of a system do they have in Holland? They got to have the same kind of elevation that we have and whatnot. And one old guy in the back, he said, this is the system we have put in today. It works like a hot darn, you know what I mean? So we got rid of the open, stinky ditches that are the open ditches. There's still a few around in the older part of the island here. Yeah. But with the sewer system going in, as you see that, I mean, I'm being surrounded by all these big new houses. I'm the little squatty place in the middle of the lot here that have been built all around. But we had that old country atmosphere down here, and everybody looked after everybody. You didn't worry, even our kids. We have 4 kids, and when they were little, it's unlike today. The kids were every which way. If they were doing something wrong, we got a phone call, and we were told about it, and they'd kick their butt and send them home. You know what I mean? Everybody sort of looked after. So you didn't dare do anything wrong that anybody on the street would see you. Kept you honest.
Did you leave? Before junior high, did you go to New West? I mean, to the other.
Oh yeah.
Other
Well, we had to.
Yeah.
We had only. Well, we had little corner grocery stores, eh? So anything you wanted to buy and shop. I mean, New Westminster at Columbia Street, the old Miracle Mile. Mm-hmm. That's where everybody had to go uptown shopping. And at that time, we had our illustrious Queensboro Bridge, the top end here, which was a swing bridge. Uh-huh. The other part of my story is the school career. My education was handicapped because I was late probably 3 or 4 times a week because the bridge would be open. So the bus would get us up to the bridge, and we'd sit there for a half hour till a tugboat went through, then the bridge closed, and we'd get across. And then so we were always coming in 9:30, quarter to 10. It was just standard. I mean, so it was, everybody laughed about it.
I talked to a lady who worked at Mercer who lived on the other side, and she always was late for work.
There you go.
The bridge was open.
And then we had the trains. Right when you got across the bridge, there was a big train shunting station going on there. So if you got across from the bridge, then the train was there. You'd sit and wait for another 10 minutes because we used to go up Royal Avenue and up the hill to the school. Anyway, so we were notoriously late for most of our life. And my standing joke is the reason I can't leave Queensboro is because I get a nosebleed from the elevation when I get up on top of the bridge.
Did I put coffee on or tea?
You have a coffee or a tea?
Oh,
I'm a coffee drinker. That's what I'm going to have. But
either
Dolly,
one
I
would
can
be
do both.
either one.
Coffee's
Coffee be
good.
just fine.
Coffee's good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Would you say the sort of the industrial past can now be seen somehow in the buildingscape in Queensboro still?
As far as the industry that's left, I would say honestly, other than if you start to look at, you think about it, what have we got? All these warehouses. I mean, we got, with our Queensboro's landing over here and whatnot. So now the ironic part is the people from New Westminster have to come to Queensboro to shop. The main, like we used to have Woodward's, which was our focal point up in New Westminster on the top of the hill. Well, that's long gone. You know what I mean? You have the, Westminster Mall and whatnot. But they basically have nothing. But all the outlet shops and everything we have here, I mean, we got the Lowe's, we got the Walmart, and, so all of a sudden, we have all the commercial as that goes. But we don't have, all the sawmills are gone now. And so... what was I going to say? The Annis's, of course, is a good development. I mean, they got strictly industry over there. They bought the whole island up, and they just, there's not trying to mix residential and industry, which always gets to be a conflict. And this is what we used to have. I mean, we had, everybody liked the work, and you were close by. I mean, everybody rode their bicycle to work and so on and so forth. But we had these great big beehive burners from the mills, and my mother just used to curse because every Monday morning she hung her clothes up and there was nothing but ashes flying all over the whole island here from, those big burners burning up all the slab wood and stuff like that from. And now, all of a sudden, our waterfront here, which, like I say, we were all fishermen, net rack floats here right from basically from the swing bridge we have now down here to Boundary Road and whatnot, it was all net rack floats. And when you were a commercial fisherman, you had to have a float with net racks on it, in order every week you had to take your net off the boat and mend it and fix it. So you needed this particular, that was a part of your industry. You had to have the float to fix the nets on. So all the fishermen, basically they were all squatters. Nobody really owned the property or land. Right now, to get a harbor board lease here, you have to be a millionaire in order to afford what it costs on the waterfront. At least little. I have a good friend that's got a marina where we have an old boat, an old Chris Craft boat tied up down here. But in order to have a place to tie your boat up now, it costs you just about as much as you pay the taxes on your house to have something, you know. And they want a fortune for a waterfront lease. And I mean, not that it didn't need cleaning up and whatnot, because years ago we were kind of bad for polluting the river. Well, you know, now you can't have a float home and whatnot without a pump out with a sewer system and, you know, hooked to a pumping station and so on and so forth, which is good. Mm-hmm. But I mean, as far as the little old guy that could make a living just fishing away and whatnot, that's gone by the wayside now.
Did any of your kids go into boat building?
Actually, my one son, he worked with me for a while, but he's got his own thing going. He does bathroom and kitchen renovations. He makes way more money than he ever did working on boats, and he's working inside. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to go out in the cold and haul big timbers and whatnot. And he's kind of got an artsy touch to it. You know, I mean, he likes you know, working with normally the gal of the kitchen and that, and doing the designs. And
I get spoiled because all my guys, they remodel the whole house and they can do the car and the boat, and so I've never had to go get someone to do something for me other than my kids.
Yeah.
When we talk about our kids, we just our daughter just celebrated her 50th birthday here a few days ago. So we got from 50, 47, and a pair of 43s. We have twin boys.
Twins.
The last one.
I was pregnant the third time, went in to have one baby. And it was doctor, another heartbeat. We had 2 bedrooms and 4 kids.
That's when you learn how quick you can add on to your house.
Oh.
Better not put that on the tape. It's going.
Okay.
I hope they're going to edit this. My rambling doesn't go good with just a straight tape.
Do you do carpentry around the house, or you wait for your? Okay, so the boat building work, the same kind of carpentry skills work for.
You know, like I said, house building, as far as I'm concerned, is way simpler and whatnot because.
Looks like a boat.
Well, I like the angles, the challenge, of this and that. That's what I never really was that fond of. My sons are better house carpenters than I am. I get carried away. Structurally, on a boat, you have to build it like it's gonna go into space. It has to be solid as a rock. Where a house has a lot lighter construction, and I never was like all gyprock. My one son there, he steel studding and drywalling, and he has his own company doing that. Eh? And well, see me, I'm poor at filling gyprock and doing that stuff, but a plank and corking it up and doing that kind of stuff. Well, that's more about my calling. Yeah.
You mentioned that it fitted your lifestyle to live in Queensborough. How did your dad or family? How did they like living in?
Well, my dad built his house in 1940 on Bombana Street, and they passed away in that same house. They had one house in their lifetime, and that's where they stayed. And I mean, it's 25 years ago now since my parents died, but. And my dad, like I said, he come home with $1,000 from fishing, and it built him the house. A lot down here at that time. My grandfather and my father we had my grandparents living next to me for the first 8 years of my life. So in 1930 is when we come to Queensborough. My grandparents, my grandfather and my dad. And $85 they paid a piece for a lot in a rhubarb field over there on Bombana Street. And grandfather built his house right away, and my dad, My dad was a bit of he liked to wander around, so he didn't settle down till a little bit later on. But when we got married and whatnot, and then he built the house, which my son actually, and daughter-in-law and 3 granddaughters all live in that house.
Oh,
they
okay.
they got the house. So
Okay.
yeah. So it's still a Gunderson house. Nobody else but a Gunderson's been in there.
Is it a wooden frame house?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Were many houses similar back in the days than the one?
Oh, that was the one thing too down here. People didn't understand such a thing as a loan or a mortgage. Every house that you've seen down here, usually the family built it themselves. They worked payday to payday, bought the lumber, built the house up. There was nothing elaborate. Everything was, not much square footage in it. And, we had some pretty fair-sized families down here. I mean, it was not uncommon for somebody to have 4 or 5 kids, you know what I mean? 6, in fact, one family, I think there was 9 kids living in a house about the same size as this one.
With 11 kids, so that seems.
Oh, yeah, well. But, so, we actually had the reputation that there was no debt down here. Had nothing. I mean, if you seen a guy driving with a car, you knew that the car was paid for. If you seen him move into the house, and it was quite common down here that, especially the Slovak people, they built the house 2 stories, and they hardly ever got out of the basement. They moved into the basement, set up. They used to use like the laundry tub and a wood stove and whatnot down there for the kitchen and whatnot. And then they finally finished the upstairs, and they had a nice couch, and usually it was always covered with blankets and whatnot. Only Christmas or New Year's or something that our company came over that you ever went upstairs in the house. They lived in the basement for most of the time. But then they went onward and upward, and especially we had the Italians were really good they came here with nothing, and they worked like crazy and helped one another build houses. Well, they moved on up the line and, living.
The East Indians.
Yeah, they worked together too. They were really, but I mean, so down here, like I said, anything that you've seen anybody had, that was theirs. You know what I mean? And that was the other story of my life. I spent half my life fishing wood out of the river, firewood for the stove.
Yeah.
My parents didn't put an electric stove in until I got married. So I hauled wood home for all my life, split it, and piled it. My buddies, I had 2 buddies that I grew up with, and we're still good friends, and we still hang together, right? And we laugh about one guy, there's another big load of wood coming to his place, so you had to get the wheelbarrow and the axe out and everything and wheel it all in, and then it would be your turn, and then, they'd help me cut my grass. And the same thing, my dad never bought a gas lawnmower until I got married, when he found out how hard it was to push that old hand mower. So it was kind of old style upbringing down here. And I mean,
And our grandkids are 5th generation.
yeah, we're 50.
Yeah.
But we, you told the mark too, because they didn't sit you down and talk to you or put you in a timeout. You found out what it was all about in no uncertain terms.
How long did it take to dry out a log from the river in order to burn it in the wood stove?
Basically, what you try to do is get a year ahead.
Okay.
So you split it, you know what I mean? And you burnt last year's wood, and, unless it was really cold.
Yeah.
We were fortunate in one way. We had a coal furnace, so that was okay. It was just our kitchen stove that we were burning wood in. So the coal, they delivered that. I didn't have to pack that in, It would last all night long anyways, in a certain term. But everything was done sort of, we took a long time modernizing down here. People had old-fashioned appliances.
Some people just stayed and never moved.
Some of them like to be too satisfied. It had everything I needed down here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I said, my kids and that, they thought, we should move up country or do this or that. Well, I got web feet because I got to be in the river. You know what I mean? I've been underwater all my life, so it just seems to be the natural.
When we
Natural
were
trend.
married, we lived 2.5 months uptown, and that was it. He had to get back. He was getting a nosebleed.
I told them about my problem going to the top of the Queensboro Bridge.
When you mentioned that the families built them wooden houses, where did they get the wood for?
Well, like I say, because all the sawmill. Actually, this house here, just to show you an example, I didn't build this house. I built half it. The old fellow that built this house was a Slovak fellow. Worked over here about 4 blocks over at the Shook's mill. He brought every piece of lumber on his bicycle. They had dunnage left over, stuff that wasn't number 1. This house is half yellow cedar, which is kind of an unusual material. I mean, it's really crackerjack material. But every piece was brought home, individually, and
He wasn't
they.
really good with a level.
No, he didn't own a level or a square, but he had lots of lumber and lots of nails. But you know what I mean. They all had a little bit of a knack to building, and you know what I mean. And of course, back in those days too, like we never had cement foundations. You know what I mean? They had like a little bit of a perimeter foundation. My old neighbor next door there, that was built on cedar logs, and poor old George Sidback there, he was born and raised down here. I mean, he would be about 110 years old if he was still alive. But that was the style, you know what I mean? They just put down some big cedar logs and built on it. We had quite a controversy for the longest time down here as to what a foundation should be. When my father built his house, they didn't want him to touch the sod. They wanted to put the foundation on top of the sod. Don't disturb it. Then you started where they wanted you to dig it up and put like a preload on it and whatnot. And we went through all kinds of controversy. Now, the perimeter of the island now has been elevated, which couldn't be done before. They told us if we raised the inside of the dike, Queensboro was going to sink, the dike was going to end up into the river. It was going to blow it out. Well, all of a sudden, that doesn't seem to have happened. So in our old area where we are here, is now if you're going to build, you cannot preload and drown your neighbor. Let's put it. You're not going to put them into a swale. You have to dry pilings. So now this is the accepted method of foundation down here. They put a perimeter piling and then like individual posts in it, cement it, and then float the whole cement on top of that. And the pilings go down anywhere from 30 to 50 feet, and then they hit stable soil. So these new houses that I have a new one right behind us over here now. They just putting the roof on today, in fact. But now that they've started with this foundation style, we have no more settling and sinking and stuff like that, which, depending on Queensboro, like any floodplain, is kind of funny. There's hard spots, there's peat, you know what I mean? And we have this beautiful soil and everything, but that you can be in one spot. Our community center, which is, you see just through the lights there, that's our middle school. They see the lights in the field there. And right next to the middle school is our community center. When they went to build that, they preloaded the whole thing. It didn't settle an inch. It just seems that particular spot is real stable foundation, you know what I mean? And he actually made them move the preload, and they figured there was something wrong, and then do it again. And it's stable as all get out. Yeah.
So, were you affected by the 1948 flood?
No, everybody says, well, just to show you, we came that close.
Thank you.
I'll bring a table over there.
We had to as a kid, I couldn't ride my bicycle on the dike. It was barely a footpath. That's how poor of a dike we had. And then after the 48 flood, and we came that close
I always
to,
forget I have
to
these.
going under, then the next year along comes the government and builds this dike that we had now. So our elevation of our dike is the 200-year floodplain. This is 13.2 elevation. That's the highest recorded height that they've ever had. So, we're still down here in the hole, inside the dike, but the dike we have now compared to that little footpath that we had, and my dad, and they were sandbagging right around the clock for about 3 or 4 days there at the critical peak of the tide in the freshet. And so
I have milk, or did you take anything?
No, thank you.
No.
up the valley, they flood. Everybody says, oh, you flooded in Queensboro. No, we never did flood down here.
Okay.
And just to show you what kind of a flood evacuation plan we had, right over here on the avenue, the railroad tracks used to run along, and they had a train, a locomotive, with a couple of flatbed cars, and if it was going to flood, we were supposed to run like crazy and jump on the...
Nothing. Have some chocolates, please. My daughter, she keeps bringing me chocolates.
That's fine. Did you have your own garden? Was it common?
Oh yeah, this is, I'll tell you honestly, I'm talking about people didn't have nothing. I would say, especially the Ukrainian, Russian, Slovak people, they were great gardeners for, they just about lived on what they produced in the garden. And every other place had a chicken coop, and you know, you all had a dozen chickens back here, and so everybody had eggs and they had chickens, and I mean, my buddy that I went to school with, his family owned this whole block here. They had, well, I think 5 cows. So I mean, there was a lot of people got their raw milk from them, you know what I mean? And then we had another one down where the Queen's Hotel is down there. There was another farm down there with cows, and I don't know if you've heard of Spagnell's store, which is now gone, but right where the bridge comes down, old Harry Spagnell, he had that whole thing, was his great big dairy farm, and you know, he had the butcher shop and so on and so forth. So, I mean, we had these, the funny part about our street, we had 2 grocery stores on the corner, and the bus driver used to call it Starvation Corner, because they figured nobody else had 2 stores on one corner, because about every other block had a little corner grocery store, you know, I mean, like I say. So, I mean, we never had a fridge. You didn't have to have one. When we had ice cream for Sunday dinner, my dad, when we finished a meal, he'd, okay, down to the store I'd go, and I'd be back in 5 minutes with a brick of ice cream, chop it up, and we'd have our ice cream right then and there. Didn't need a fridge. So, and I mean, I still can remember chasing the ice truck around. You know, there was a few people that had ice boxes, you know, and they come with the big block of ice and so on, and you know, they'd chisel off a little bit, and you'd have a little chunk of ice to suck on. So that was quite common.
Yeah. When do you think the change happened? When was there no gardens? I mean, I'm sure that there are still like community garden, but I mean those.
Well,
backyard.
I would say honestly, probably like my parents' age, when those people basically got old and whatnot, I would say honestly the gardening went by the wayside. They were the ones that were the real active gardeners, you know what I mean? Most people had come up from farms, or you know, even in where they'd come from, you know, like say a lot of the Russian people there that I know here, they were all from farming communities and so on and so forth. So I mean, that was, the gardening was just a way of life, and it's once they got up and passed away, I mean, my old buddy there, his grandfather, he got to be about 90 years old. When he got too old to shovel the garden, you know who had to do it. We'd come along, and you know, they'd do half the backyard would be a great big vegetable garden. But once they kind of, you know, passed away and whatnot, I would say, you know, there's still a few guys that really like to garden. It's a real hobby with them. So there's still gardens down here. We have one Chinese family, Leong there, that has the vegetable garden down just past the Queens, down past Jardine. They still produce, you know, fresh vegetables and whatnot. You can still get, you know what I mean. But even then, they're just on the verge of retiring too. So they you know, that's sort of gone by the wayside too. Now, like you said, up at the top end here at Port Royal, we have, you know, the community garden. They have that really nicely looked after. I don't know if you've ever been up in there, but they have it tiered, you know what I mean, and it's well maintained, and I mean, it's all new houses and everything up there. So the area itself is you know, and it's very nice. And in fact, our big thing now that's really changed. Before, you worked like a madman splitting wood and packing lumber and this and that. Now, of course, we have our perimeter trail. So we do walks and stuff like that, and they have gone to great lengths to develop up at the top end of the island here. We have right along the waterfront. That's the one thing the developer had to give you, that foreshore for public access, you know, and walking trails and whatnot. And so, again, the big mouth. Every once in a while, I lead a group on a walk along the dike and have to tell my stories.
I was going to ask you if you walk on the dike, and yeah.
And also, we had our 150 tours of all over New Westminster and so on and so forth. You know who was one of the people on the tour bus narrating for Queensboro.
Oh, okay.
So
Is this the tour you went on? This
150 New Westminsters.
You didn't do that. Annika went on I guess the planning tour this year.
Yeah. Anyhow, so it gives you, you know, all the different areas of New Westminster, and of course, again, somehow my name came up for Queensboro, so I had to do the tour around Queensboro on the trolley bus.
Oh, wow.
What do you think about the development in Port Royal?
Actually, you know, if you ever wanted the history of Queensboro, the what we've had and from years back. This was a local resident that wrote this,
Oh.
and it goes back to the turn of the century and the different industries that were down here and the different manufacturers that were there. But I don't know. People are slow to accept change, and Queensboro is not like it used to be. Well, in a lot of senses, it's a good thing too, because we don't stand. You can't stay back in the past.
Yeah.
You have to advance. And the way I look at it up there, I think they've got a little bit of a rhyme or reason the way they're developing. You know what I mean? And they've cut back on. They don't try to put high rises up there and then put so many people. Our biggest problem here, and I mean, I'll tell you, you try to come and go from this island at rush hour. And that's where the real drawback is. And unfortunately, it seems like the people that live on the other side of the river have to work on this side and back and forth, you know what I mean? So it's, you're talking about Dawes Shipyard and Mercer's in there.
Oh, yeah.
There's a fairly good picture of, there's. That's the gal. The island was named after Lulu.
Oh.
She was a San Francisco showgirl.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Did you know that?
Yeah, but in some other places they name her actor or something.
Yeah,
Okay,
well.
yeah.
But yeah, showgirl.
Yeah, showgirl. Yeah.
I've seen that picture. Yeah.
You see, that was sort of, there's like the typical sawmill type of thing that was
Right.
down here, and there was 3 of those at the top
So,
end at Port Royal.
Is that the beehive burner?
This is the beehive burner right here. That's
Oh.
the big burner in there.
Oh, okay.
And here we go. This is the Mercer family in the shipyard here. And I've skated on the river here a few times too. It's froze up so much that you couldn't go by boat. And there's some of the early. This is old Mercer right here. That was one of the brothers there. But,
Right.
I just leave that down. So Queensboro, it's gone through a lot of changes, and but how can you expect an old person to be happy with when there's that much more people and traffic's bad? I'd be like I said, a fool to say that I'm totally disappointed. There's I enjoyed my childhood, but like everything else, it's gone, it's past. Enjoyed it when I was here, and then let's move onward. You know what I mean? Like my dad used to always say, the best things about the good old days is they're gone. But these are some of the old houses, like some of the people like the Crane family and some of the more prominent that owned the sawmills and whatnot. They built a little bit more. I'm talking about the small houses, but they built a little bit more elaborate houses and
Okay.
Do you feel like a lot of it's gone now? I mean, the sawmills are gone, but
Oh, yes, yeah.
But still, are there something left, like warehouses or?
Well, like I say, we have warehouses coming up over here on the north arm of the river.
Yeah.
The whole north arm is developing, and then of course we have these container trucks coming down here too, which again is a kind of a pet peeve down here. You know how the traffic going, and there's no talk whatsoever of another bridge or another crossing and whatnot. So, I mean, I feel bad for those people that have the industries over there. I mean, with all the shops and whatnot, because you don't dare come, like I say, during rush hour. I think a lot more people would be down shopping and whatnot if they had better access. But then, where do you go in the Lower Mainland to do that? Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
You seen that? I think I've seen that at the public library. Yeah.
Yeah, they have this one.
And she was actually, Helen Pullen was a very neat gal. She was she had a different outlook on life. She just used to live over here. She was kind of a friend of ours and whatnot. And she even used to write plays and skits for our community center, and get people involved. And
I see.
we had a one skit there that they had me on trial. It was a court, and why would anybody stay in Queensboro when they listed all these problems: the open ditches, the sewers, the drainage, the this, the that. And they come to the conclusion that I must have been dropped on my head as a baby. That was that's the kind of a gal. She wrote that play.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Okay. Yeah.
When you think about the redevelopment that's going on, do you think there's something that you would like that should be preserved in Queensborough? I mean, something about the
I'm talking about
lifestyle
if it was daylight, you could see they must, I don't know how many hundreds of truckloads of fill has gone in my buddy's old farmland down here. His house is actually moved to the back of the property to be preserved as a heritage house. I have a list of the heritage homes that are down here and
Yeah.
whatnot. In reality, they didn't have much style or character to them. You know what I mean? So preserving something like that, I don't know if it. When I look at what they have to do to put that house, they're building all these townhouses and condos and whatnot. That house, I understand, is going to be like a clubhouse in the middle of it somehow and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it just doesn't seem like such a special thing that the heritage house is such. Just because it's a few years old and whatnot doesn't make it. There was more of the character stuff that was along the river that would have been like they'd done to Britannia Shipyard. Unfortunately, the old sailors that I was at, it got so far, let's say, let go, that it doesn't remind me, like a little working shipyard. You know what I mean? So basically, we don't have that much down here. That's, I'll tell you honestly, what's really been our biggest major improvement, our community center. And I mean, we have the middle school here and our parks. All of a sudden, if anything, we have, before they used to take a field, mow the grass and call it a park.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Queensborough, that doesn't work because drainage, flooding fields and whatnot. Now they put in major drain, fill. I mean, the landscaping, it's done up right. So when we have a park now, and we have our old school park, which is just up by the ring road here, that's where all us kids in Queensborough went to school. That was it until it burnt down in the 70s. That's what we call, and I'm kind of proud to say it, I named it the Old School Park. That was my suggestion for the name of that, because everybody from, the 20s, that was where the school was located. It was the Queensborough School and then Queen Elizabeth School, which now we have the little Queen Elizabeth Elementary just across over here. But now we got the community center over here, which is a real kind of a focal point for Queensborough, you know what I mean? And we just went through a big renovation. We originally fought like crazy to get it, and they built it, and now it's been redeveloped and spent millions of dollars upgrading it. I mean, it's got its own library in there, and it's got a fantastic exercise room.
Yeah.
And Renee Chadwick, the gal that runs it, she's Dolly there, she's on the committee, with the special programs and whatnot. And I mean, they have done a first-class job of it, and they host. Unfortunately for us, we lost a granddaughter, 18 years ago or whatever. She was killed by a hit-and-run driver. Well, we have a little tiny tot park named after her here, and that's sort of been a pet project for our family. You know what I mean? They raised, I don't know, $140,000 to establish this park, and then the city has thrown in as much again. And so now it's a first-class tiny tot park, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's another thing that's been, well received and well looked after. And now it's even better yet. They've really opened it up, and it looks really good down there. So we're quite happy with that. Yeah.
Do you have some other questions about Queensborough? I want to ask about boat building.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Go back to
Go
that.
ahead. Yeah.
So, tell me, who takes your boat building classes?
Basically, all the people I have in my class are in the marine industry. And it's like a 5-part course. I mean, most people are into the fiberglass, the composites, engines, installations, electronics, you know what I mean? And like I say, the part that I'm involved in is the history lesson kind of a thing. This is, I don't know, I'm supposed to brag with it. This is another kind of thing, but
Very
it's
nice.
always the river. This is the thing I'll be teaching tomorrow night.
Okay. Okay. So it's not hobbyists.
No. This is a part of an apprenticeship program.
Okay.
It's actually a 4-year course. This is my 3rd-year students that I'll be in with tomorrow night. And I'm 10 years ago I got talked into doing this, and I'm still still involved. I only do this for a few nights, this time I'm only doing 3 sessions. I'm doing 2 on the boat construction and 1 on lofting.
Okay.
And, because you got to be honest, wooden boat construction is, like I say, it's history now. And so, but this is what I have to try to get across to them, how we used to build boats and how the keels and the stem, the stern, the horn timber, this, the shaft log and whatnot. The names of all, nowadays you have a bow and a stern and the left and the port and starboard side. In my time in the boat industry, every piece in the boat's got a name. And so when they told you to build a shaft log or a horn timber or a deadwood post or a 4-foot or a breast hook or whatever, you knew exactly what part of the boat you were doing. And now I say that to my class, you know what I mean? Got to find their map.
Yeah. So did you develop these materials, or did somebody else do that?
No, actually, this has been set up by. It's actually a number of different tradespeople that have come up with this stuff.
Okay.
It's my basic, and I just elaborate on it. I mean, my problem is I've done too much of it that I can't just let it go in a few pieces. I have to describe how it goes together and how it's achieved and how you come about getting this. You know what I mean? Because you can talk till you're blue in the face, but until you have tried to do it, you don't realize the good and the bad and the tough and the not so tough.
So
and again, there's knowing a lap straight boat or a carvel plank, you know what I mean? Or you got cold molded or strip planked and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing that I have to. So when you're gonna work on a boat, you got to know how it's put together in order to fix it.
Right.
Because basically that's what it's about now. All these people are in the industry, repairing. There's not a heck of a lot of new construction. The new construction's a big manufacturer building fiberglass, you know what I mean? So they have the super molds, and everything is computerized nowadays. There's no thing as taking a lofting drawing. You feed your information into the computer, it cuts it to the 16th of an inch, you know what I mean? It's so deadly exact. Where our philosophy was you can only see one side of the boat at a time. So.
So do the students do they get excited about the possibilities for working on wooden boats?
Well, actually, I actually had a couple, 3 or 4 over the years that have really been involved with wood. So, the course meant a lot to them. They knew exactly what you're talking about. And then you get a few people. I had a lawyer take the course, and it was just because he wanted to repair his own boat. He had a sailboat and whatnot, and so he took the course in order to, and he devoted 4 years to figure out how to fix his own boat. But and then I have right now this class I have 3 gals in it, you know what I mean. But mainly they work down at Granville Island on the charter, stuff. So they're doing the bright work, like finishing a little bit and fixing up, the odd thing and sanding and varnishing and polishing. There's not a heck of a lot of wood on a boat anymore, but the bits that are there, I mean, they got to maintain it, you know what I mean. And in fact, there's a couple of those gals there, I'm telling you, they can work with a buffer or a sander and whatnot, boy, a match to anybody. They know what they're doing, you know what I mean. So, but like I say, this stuff is sort of not their forte, but they have to write every night. We have exams or tests, quizzes and study sheets, and then they have to write at the final. They got to achieve a certain mark, otherwise, you don't get any credits for the course. And it's basically what it is the government pays half, your employer pays a quarter, and you pay a quarter. That's how it works. So. I mean, if you're investing your own money into it, you're going to be a little bit more cautious than, when you pay to go to university, it's up to you to achieve what you're after. I mean, even I can figure that one out. Well, my granddaughter, the oldest one, she's in her 5th year now that she's at university. She's been working at it a long time, but she found out how expensive it is to get your degree.
Are you involved with the Britannia shipyard at all?
I'm a procrastinator. They've tried to talk me into it a number of times, but usually when it ends up is they just want me to work on a project. Some people get a little carried away with this. They're dreaming about building boats and this and that. I've sort of done enough of it. It's fun to talk about it and whatnot. And like I said, the old master, they try to talk me into coming in and working on that, the old steam tug and stuff. But the boss here, she's got more projects at home. She says you don't need to go all the way down there to find work.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you have some other questions?
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
so you mentioned women in your course. Were there any? Did you ever work with any women at Sailor?
No, not there, but I did work for a while down at Shelter Island, and we had, well, it's the reason she got she had her first aid, her industrial first aid ticket, and you know how when you get a certain size crew, you got to have somebody with industrial first aid, and she worked with us for a while, and she wasn't too bad a woodworker because she was trying to be a finishing carpenter, but then she got a job in the Vancouver Fire Department, and that
pays
you got
really
a pension,
well.
you got, and she was a First Nations gal too, so she got extra push on it. But unfortunately, she was holidaying back in, this got to be 3-4 years ago, back in China or in Vietnam or someplace, and was killed in a motorcycle accident. So funny, when I seen that name, I thought I know that person. You know what I mean? And yeah, sure enough. She worked with us for about a year down there, but so there's, like, I'm down at Shelter Island there right now doing a bit of stuff, and it's amazing how many gals are in the industry. I mean, I know one gal, she's really taken up, and she does the finishing, cut polishing, and she's got her own crew. Like, now people are too darn lazy to clean up their own boats, so she brings it up, and she brings in her crew and cleans it up. She's really well organized and makes it look like brand new again. You know what I mean? So there's a few like her, and actual woodworking people and whatnot. Not a heck of a lot of gals in that. I know a few that have been cabinet makers and stuff like that. And I have one friend that's in the fishing industry, and she actually is a certified lawyer, but couldn't stand to deal with people, and bought herself a fish boat. And I mean, a very bright lady. She bought this old fish boat, and she got a manual on how to rebuild. She took the engine apart herself, rebuilt this old diesel engine, fixed it all up, and there's nothing that she can't do. So I give her credit. Only thing that we like to get in a little bit of arguments about. I'm talking about going down the manhole to check the stuffing box in that, and she says, "Les, on this boat, it's not a manhole." And I says, "Are you going down or am I?" She said, "Well, no, you're going down." I said, "Well, then it's a manhole." And then she got battered. But that's the kind of person I am.
Can I ask about there's a new community plan coming for Queensborough.
Yes.
And on the first page, I think they say it's distinctive, the whole area. I'd just like to know, what do you think they mean by that?
Well, it's a beautiful drawing as far as I'm concerned. I'll never be around long enough to ever see it come into play. I mean, our big controversial thing is our main highway here. They're going to have all these roundabouts on it. Well, we're dealing with a street that's hardly 2 cars could pass. A fire truck goes by and there's no room for it to go. And they're talking about putting roundabouts and if all of a sudden we come into billions of dollars, you might live long enough to see it. But I mean, it's a nice plan. I think about 2040 is when they hope to have it going. Well, I'm not going to be around. I'll tell you that honestly. I mean, it's a glorious plan. Just like if you were building the ideal community. I mean, to ever see it done down here, I don't know. For one reason, to me, it just seems to be too expensive. But Queensborough was the last little place with land available. I mean, it's still cheaper then up on the hill, mind you, we are starting to get more expensive all the time. But it was, as close as you could get to downtown Vancouver and still be affordable to come in. So that's what's caused all this development going around. But like anybody, even these new people that all come in, they're happy with the way it is. And you tell them, okay, I'll just double your taxes and we can put in those sidewalks. Not me, boy. I'm not going to double my taxes. If you want to pay for it, it can happen. But the way it stands right now, I've been to a number of these meetings. I've seen the plan and so on and so forth. Everybody says, oh, yes, I'd love to see that, as long as I don't have to pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
So in that aspect, I don't think it's going to come all that quick. I mean, it's a nice plan. Look like a beautiful, if you want that suburb type of a community and whatnot. For me, playing in these ditches when I was a kid with my boat on a string and running up and down there, we used to have a wonderful flushing system because of our old sewer system that we had, and the ditches got stinky. At high tide, there used to be a floodgate. They'd open up in the river, and the water would pour through, and the individual blocks had gates on them, and they'd let the water, and it would come up about almost 10 inches or so, roar through, which flushed it out and go right around, and then it would be pumped out. And every individual block, every other night, would get flushed out. So that's how they kept, in the summertime when the ditches got low and started to get stinky and whatnot, that's how they kept them, fresh. And we had these little stickleback fish. You come to my house here now in a few months, you can't hardly talk out in the front here because of the frogs. We got the choir going here like you wouldn't believe, which is, if you want to say, a sign of a healthy environment. And years ago, there used to be mosquitoes around. Well, now there's a group from UBC and whatnot that have been doing this, that they're actually coming in and putting these pellets in the ditch and whatnot to kill the mosquito larvae. And you know what I mean? And we can sit out back here, and I don't think I hardly ever see a mosquito. You know what I mean? So that part, with our open flooded fields and whatnot are all disappearing and so on and so forth. We have ducks, mallard ducks down here like Stanley Park. I mean, we have a big drainage canal just a couple blocks over here. You got to watch out because they'll run over a dozen ducks. They don't get off the road. I mean, we had a beaver right here at the corner of the street.
Really?
They had trees all growing here, and he was logging trees down like you wouldn't believe. So, and we had the coyotes running through here, and everybody, oh, look at that. Well, we got these, blue heron. God, every block's got one that's in the ditch. They're looking for still the fish in the ditch here, And we got the eagles around here, so, and the red-tailed hawks. So it's still kind of, we're right in the middle of you could say the urban area here, but we're still like a kind of off to the side yet. And the river, like I say, for us, I don't have to go, up to a fancy restaurant or whatnot. I take a load of my grandkids all on the boat and whatnot, and we run up the river here to Pitt Lake. I mean, I can go up the river, and right into Pitt Lake, which is one of the few tidal lakes in the world. And my boys have a great big fancy ski boat and whatnot, and they water ski and wakeboard, and we camp overnight, and you know what I mean. And our boat, they like it because I have a bathroom in the thing, so they got a place to go. You know what I mean. And we have a glorious time. It's an old slow boat. It only goes about 8-9 miles an hour. I mean, it's the old family barge.
Did you build it?
No, it's actually a Chris Craft. It's actually
it's
I
fiberglass.
picked it up. No,
No?
it's wood.
It's wood?
It's got to be
Okay.
wood.
Okay.
It's 50 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, it's built the old lap straight method of building, but I spent countless hours just tinkering, fixing, and keeping it. I put a diesel engine in it, and and put a little bit of a cabin on it, and so on and so forth. But it's just not worth nothing except to us.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But the river's always been, I mean, just to show you, when I was a young kid, different style. When I was 12, I guess I was about 12 years old, my parents, I rode all the way down the river around to the bottom of Anniston over to my cousins over in Sunbury, who'd let their kid go out, and I had my sister with me who was 5 years younger than me. We'd spend the afternoon, row down the river, row across the main river, and over and visit my cousins and row back. And didn't think nothing of it. Never had a life jacket. Didn't own a life jacket till I got to be about 20, 25 years old. But that was just life on the river. You learn to survive. That, you know what I mean? If if you kind of never on the river, you can see the people that are nervous. If you've been, knee deep your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems to be commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I still ask one question about the buildings here? Because I've seen a lot of black and white pictures, but how were the colors in the buildings? Are they?
Oh,
Back
you
in the
mean as
day,
far
how
as?
are they
Oh no. I can honestly tell you what my house, my parents' house was white.
Yeah.
My mother had to have white. It wasn't until halfway through their life they finally put a two-tone color. They put a brown on the bottom or a green or something. I could honestly say the color of the houses were determined what the cheapest paint was on an Army and Navy. My neighbor, my buddy's house, it was green. His dad bought it 5-gallon buckets of this green he could get for about $3-4, and that's the paint that went on the house. But no, there was a few people that were really looked after their places. They were trimmed all up, you know what I mean, and painted. And my grandfather always had to have flower boxes, you know what I mean. And my grandmother, of course, she was always a gardener, and she had her flowers and this and that, you know what I mean. And I mean, just 3 doors over from here, that's all preloaded thing. There used to be like an orchard there. They had, cherry trees, nut trees, apple trees, pear trees, everything, in the old family house there. So there was lots of fruit trees and stuff around down here, you know what I mean, that people had. But I mean, the houses were kind of tiddled all up, and everybody had a little blueberry bush in the back. And my old great uncle and aunt used to live just down the street here. He had bird houses on every corner fence post in the place, you know what I mean? That's what he just loved to do. So it looked quite ornamental. So the houses, I would say honestly, were kind of gingerbread houses, you know what I mean? It was kind of cute.
Uh-huh.
So they were like, each of one of them was different.
Oh yeah, I mean they're all, unlike you get the great big tall box nowadays. Everyone, I mean, they had all kinds of different styles. I mean the gables, the main thing wasn't to make it look, you had to have like a fancy porch on it and posts and you know what I mean, and whatever. And of course back in the day too, some guys had the wooden sidewalks and other guys just put a couple planks in, you know what I mean. But because of our ditch situation, everybody had a bridge that went across your ditch into your place. And there was another thing, as a kid, that was quite common. You weren't considered a Queensborough person until you were initiated and christened in the ditch. You had to fall in and you come up all covered in slime and mud and whatnot. I spent more time in the laundry tubs in the basement in my house than I did in the bathtub. 'Cause my mother wouldn't allow me in the house. She took me to the laundry tub, and that's where I had to clean up. And like I say, about once a week you fell in the ditch. You missed the corner when you come flying in with your bicycle, eh? Plow down you went.
Right.
Yeah. Can I still ask, how do you see, like, what kind of a role Queensborough now have as a part of the city?
Well, I think honestly,
US?
we've come from being a thorn in Westminster's side to actually being a place that they actually come and are quite involved in. Before, we were a total outcast. We actually tried to join Richmond or somebody else because we got absolutely no service whatsoever from New Westminster, from City Hall. If we would just drift out and become a part of the Gulf Islands, would have been the answer to New Westminster's prayers. The tax revenue that they get from down in Queensborough, we keep the schools going because this is the only place that the student population is growing, so they have to get a few more dollars per student and whatnot. The homes that are coming in here, all of a sudden, I mean, from a place that, when I bought this place, I paid $11,000 for it. Well, now you got $800,000 houses in Queensborough, which was unheard of. I mean, man, you could have bought the whole island for that kind of money.
Yeah. When did that change?
Well, basically, I would say honestly, when they kind of run out of property on the hillside, and they just found out that this is the only place that still got land left, and then the developers started coming in here, picking up some of the old houses and whatnot. Before the old houses, the people when they moved away, they didn't sell their house; they rented it out. So you had all these families that were just starting, and so I mean there was a lot of people in the old family houses that were renting them. Well, then all of a sudden, holy smokes, you could get way more money by selling the lot, and didn't have to worry about collecting your rent or whatever. So then they really started. And believe it or not, our biggest influx down here, everybody thinks that we're all with the East Indian population. We actually, Philippine is the biggest group down here now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So which has really changed a lot from from years ago. You know, I mean, we always had a few. Chinese were mainly all our gardeners and whatnot on the. We never had a lot of Chinese families here, but we had lots of gardeners around here, and they were. I mean, again, there was the other thing that a lot of the women, like, you know, they worked in the garden all summer long. You know, they always had a little job going, sort of a thing, and you know, so they got employed. The Chinese gardeners, they'd hire all these gals to go out there and hoe their cabbage and tomatoes and stuff like that, and so, you know, anybody that wanted to make $1 or $2, and then there was this whole thing across from us used to be a great big bean field. As kids, we used to go over there and pick beans and make about $2-3 if we were lucky. You know what I mean? And that, but this was, you know, the type of thing that went on, and so there was lots of big parcels like that. You know, so if you wanted, and even blackberries, there used to be a guy go around, you know, when we were kids, and you could buy, you know, a bucket of. He had a scale in the back of his little old car or his truck he had. And, you know, if you were willing to go along the dike there, and there was all kinds of blackberries grew all along there, and you know, pick a bucket of blackberries, and the guy'd buy them off you, you know. So it was always something going on.
Okay. Wow.
Anybody want more coffee here?
I think I'm good.
You're
Yeah,
good?
I'm good too.
Yeah? Oh.
Yeah, thank you.
I gotta. I don't know how you'd say it in Finnish, but coffee chatting. That's the Norwegian style.
Coffee is just coffee. Usually the Finnish words are very long, but
Yeah.
coffee is the one that we have.
Well, it's a funny thing. My mom's dad and my mom's mother and dad were
Yeah.
Estonian.
Ah.
Okay, and my grandfather, and I never did meet my grandmother because he died way back, but my grandfather, he spoke Finn. I mean, and kind of in English. I'm not sure, he mumbled quite a lot, but that day Finnish was his strong suit.
I can relate, like, right away. Yeah. Yeah, actually, yeah. Do you mind if I take a picture of one of these pictures here?
Oh, go, sure.
I
Someone.
just wanna see.
You know, if you're actually ever wanting to see some old river pictures,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Frankie G's Pub. It's just up on Mercer, the corner of Mercer and Ewan Avenue. We had in fact, she was the sister of the skipper of the tugboat I was on. She went around years ago and collected old river pictures and whatnot, and they've got them enlarged, and they're all over the walls. In fact, say their boat works, you'll see with all our fleet tied up outside there. And they're quite good pictures, and they're all over it's called Frankie G's Boiler House Pub. And some real good old, you know, 20s and 30s river pictures.
Okay.
So I mean, if you wanted to take snapshots, and Ron Bazaran, he's one of the owners of the place. His son Kevin
Yeah.
works there, and I'm sure if you guys introduced yourself and whatnot, he'd be more than willing to let you look around at the.
Yeah, Alan actually mentioned him too, that maybe we could.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
And Bazaran is a well-known family down here. They were in the trucking industry and whatnot. But anyhow, in fact, Ron just lives over here.
Yeah.
But the real good pictures. I mean, they really, to get a
Okay.
nice big shot of the river, and they got like Mercer's Yard, and they got like our sailors. And like I said, just along here, we had 4 or 5 little shipyards just in a short stretch. We were side by side in competition with one another, but like I say, a friendly competition. I mean, you lived by your product, and then that was your only advertising. If they liked what you built and whatnot, you got the contracts to build boats. I mean, we have the Komachi family, which is a well-known Japanese. When they came back after about 1950, 51, they bought the whole block over here and built all new houses and built new boats and whatnot, and they jumped right back into the fishing industry. They could have come back bitter as all get out, but they came back and made up their mind to be very successful, and they did. They become, they're top-notch boat builders and fishermen. And
They still live here?
yep.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's not many of the old guys left. It's all the widows that are left over here, but there's the other thing. Our community center, we always went to the Japanese New Year's party, and that was all.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
we were kind of always accepted in with the crowd.
Is this your boat? This one on the corner? Because
That's when Dolly and I first got married. The first thing I did was build us a boat. That's 1962. I built that 16-foot with a little outboard. Had to have a boat.
I have to show you. My grandpa used to actually have a similar one in Finland. It really reminds me. I have it.
No, we're done though.
Yeah. And just quickly when I show it to you. This I remember when I was a kid. We used to be on this boat, so it's quite.
Oh, well, that's a nice, yeah.
It's a similar kind of
Yeah.
look.
It's got an old
Oh, yeah.
1957 Evan route on it.
But it's
What, your glasses?
actually these ones were more like common. It's we used to row with the.
Oh yeah, yeah,
with
that's
the wooden boats, but that's a very
Yeah.
very one.
yeah.
Were you a rower?
Well, I used to row too, but it was just for a summer cottage.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
We have
more
one
fishing.
granddaughter that at Shawnigan Lake she was a
Oh.
rower.
Ah.
Yeah,
But
she was
it's
in that
just-
competition, you know, that with
Yeah.
the shells,
Oh, yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
We went back to.
She would Skype her hands to me.
Oh,
They were all
blistered and-
blistered.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But she's at UVic now, and she really would love to go and rowing. But you're up at 5 in the morning rowing before class, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, just too much right now.
Yeah.
She wishes that there was just
Yeah, that's
rowing
a-
for pleasure. But
Yes,
you know, they're
yeah. No, it's so competitive.
Oh.
And if you're not,
Yeah, we. What was
it's
it?
hard
we
to
were
do
back-
sport just for fun now.
no, you don't. Nobody does it.
Yeah.
Well, even now they're
Merc.
starting to have courses for little kids that can go out and play just with other kids, make up their own rules
Thanks.
instead of
I don't know.
having parents.
You seen that that other big folder thing we had, the boat people. There's a here.
To boat people.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This is our other boat. I had it in the shop. I put a new bottom on that's the one we had a lot of fun. That's a 20-foot boat with a Volvo in and out. Our family every weekend we either went up the lake or we went across the Gulf. We used to go over to the Gulf Island. This is the one that that was another plywood boat that I actually bought it
That
and
was the
rebuilt.
first one, 16.
16. That's the one.
We used to take the 4 kids and
Out into the ocean.
plastic over when it was. And then he made little slats that fit across the back, and we could all sleep.
We slept in the whole thing.
Oh dear.
I'm one of those kind of guy. I sewed my own top and everything. I bought canvas and I took my mother's sewing machine and I sewed up and I made this top for the whole boat so the whole family could fit in there and we could go flying across the Gulf.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of a water nut. I love being on the
So we're
water.
all
Yeah.
our kids.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Queensborough too, Dolly?
No, I moved in 58 across the street from him.
Ah.
That's all we bet.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I told my mom when I was 14, I said, I'm going to marry that guy.
I was one of
But
those
he
bad
wouldn't-
guys
he
that
wouldn't
I.
marry me until I was 18. To mature.
I used to have a motorcycle and that to ride around, and so poor Dolly, she spent half her life hanging on for dear life on the back.
And he used to spin out oil, and the first thing I'd have to do when we stopped is get a blade of grass and scrape the oil off my blades.
Never said it was classy. I said I had a motorcycle.
Yeah, but she was hooked.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's right. I know at our 50th anniversary, that's what I told everybody. I said I knew we'd be together because he never throws anything out. I never gets rid of anything. And then the kids too, we told them, they were saying, we said, well, we might have divorced, but I wouldn't take the kids and he wouldn't take the kids.
So we had to stay
So we had to
together.
stay together. Oh, poor kids.
Well,
Well,
I
you
think
know-
we've I think we've come to the end of our questions.
Well, actually, you haven't asked any yet.
You just didn't hear them.
No,
Yeah.
I've been too busy talking. I didn't give you a chance.
You answered everyone, actually.
Yeah, he's actually a great historian.
He
I know.
really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. This
Yes.
And
is
when we have functions down at the center too, a lot of times they like him to speak.
Well, just to show you one time way back, I had to bring all my old all my old boat building tools and whatnot, you know. And I inherited my grandfather's toolbox from way back, so I have this old wooden chest that he brought from Norway with him, you know what I mean? And the funny thing was when old grandfather passed away, my grandmother told her son, my dad, to come over and pick up his dad's tools. And the funny part was, my dad says, you know what? I was never allowed to touch them as a kid, and I'm not going to start now because you give them to Les. So I had to go over. They were living on Main Island. I had to go over with my little 16-foot boat and pick up the toolbox.
Stubborn Norwegian.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been an interesting life.
Well,
Like I say, it's ironic that only because I think of the family kind of heritage and whatnot. When I started in the boat industry, like I say, even back in the in the early, I worked in the summertime too, like in the mid '50s and stuff there with but it was an ancient industry then, and it was sort of the tail end. But because we had such a successful run at it for so many years, I mean, most people in the '50s were getting into composites and glass and whatnot, where the wood was still for us going strong, and we were pretty well the last yard to still be building wooden boats. You know what I mean? So you kind of get caught up in the, and the thing is too, all of a sudden, what am I going to change jobs and whatnot? You got to look after your family, and you got steady employment. Like I said, the whole time I worked year round, and a lot of the guys.
And you loved it.
Oh yeah, I always loved it. I mean, it was like I say, I love the part about it is if you go to sleep, you're gonna fall up. Eh? You gotta keep your mind going the whole time and watch what you're doing and kind of be a couple of steps
Never
ahead.
have heat.
Oh, not in the way. That
He's
just slows
still
you down.
working outside. No. I said, use this. Not
Not a bad advice. Yeah.
Well,
But he's out there.
Yeah.
When you come home with that cotton in your ears, and I said, "What were you doing?" What were you
corking.
doing? Yeah.
Everybody wears earplugs and whatnot. I never wear earplugs, but I take the corking cotton and just stick it in my ears.
Yeah. Do you have some?
No, I think I've asked all my questions. I may call you back up and say, got some more.
Oh, that's fine. All right.
Well, you know where.
If
know
you
where
think
to
of
find
something,
you.
you guys want to know about it.
Yeah.
If you want to get some real tough questions to answer, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I said, I'll always give you an answer. It might not be right. In my opinion, it is.
That's what we want. Yeah.
That's what we want is people's opinions. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be nice when in the summer and he could take you out in the boat and go along the river.
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
Annika, you have to go back to Finland.
So now you're schooling here. What basically are you trying to achieve? I mean, what is your goal?
my goal is to